Hi everyone. Welcome to June's GRIDtalk. Delighted to be joined by Arup for this session. We're going to give you guys a quick introduction into the MAPS Toolkit, which we'll come to explain in a bit, but also share sort of lessons learned and sort of from our experiences of doing sort of enterprise implementation with Arup. So if I just move us through. For those that are new to GRIDtalk, it's something we set up at Method Grid just to share P3M best practice, insight, hints and tips around P3M capability build across our clients. So welcome for those that, if it's your first one, hi, nice to meet you. Okay, and just to quickly signpost for next month's GRIDtalk, we thought we've done a lot of client showcasing. I think most of them have been client showcasing experience, their experience. We thought we would do a more internal focused GRIDtalk, so led by Method Grid. And we're just going to go through and show you sort of hints and tips, things that you have to think about that help you build project delivery methods and playbooks. So more practical about what you have to think about and how you go about it, and how you can design elements to create really good playbooks. So that's for next month. That's July's, and just slightly changed the schedule. We've moved it at request to try and move it out of month end and move it to a Thursday, just to help people attend, because not everyone works on a Friday. So just make those tweaks and changes. Okay. Tom, I think we'll post the link to the chat if you want to sign up from there. So that'll be in the chat as well. Okay. Without further ado, so for those that don't know me, but I think the majority of all do now. So I'm Pip Morpeth. I'm head of professional services for Method Grid. And I'm delighted to introduce both of you, Francesca and Dave. But Francesca, if you give a quick intro.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Francesca. I work with Arup as an associate, and I've been working with Method Grid and my colleague Dave, who's about to introduce himself, on the development of the MAPS Toolkit for Arup, and we're about to go into the next stage, which is launching for full use across our company.
Thanks, Francesca. So hi everyone, I'm Dave Marks. I'm an associate in the PPM team in London, and I'm an information management specialist. And as Francesca said, we've both been leading the team implementing the Method Grid implementation, which we call MAPS, within Arup over the last year or so.
Cool. Right. Guys, I'm going to have to go through this really quickly because we really want to focus the session on MAPS and going through the lessons learned, but also give you guys opportunity to ask questions. For those that are new to Method Grid, I'll just run through this in about 2 minutes. So the main problem we help clients with is just helping reduce the cost of poor quality that comes from inconsistent service delivery and project delivery. I'm sure if you run across those pain symptoms 1 to 8, you'll have experienced them working in professional services. But the so what for us is you've got to provide help people and provide method, some form of clarity on how best to deliver services and projects. There's got to be a means by which you can help people measure compliance and track that people are using it properly, but also in some ways giving them the ability to tailor and right size it for their particular project. People capability is obviously key in terms of making sure that people are clear with clear grades, competencies, but also, we focus on ensuring that the mix of both so structured learning and on-demand learning is integrated into the ways of working. And naturally, the way all projects delivery environment will always have an inherent risk. So there's always an audit and assurance regime that will be present. And it's just really the questions on how well that's actually integrated with method, but also how well it's integrated with teams. Okay. From a Method Grid perspective, I think the only thing that that we looked at is really the separation between knowledge management and project management. And what we've done with our platform is join that up. So you can build knowledge-rich playbooks that define how you want to deliver services and projects. The trick being that integrates both knowledge management and project management. But when you've got your toolkit, you can then clone it for each individual project, and that's that grid, that second sphere there. And that's just allows you then to tailor that playbook for the particular client or tailor it for the particular scope of the project. But that's helping teams or project managers take ownership of how they want to deliver the service. And as you clone those playbooks, you learn, and that drives that continuous improvement loop in terms of driving updates and improvements into the ways of working. Okay, so I think probably most of what we'll see today is obviously the MAPS toolkit, and I think as Francesca mentioned, we're just done the first launch or the first tranche of users across Arup's PPM advisory service group. Okay, right, and finally, for us, main purpose is helping organisations with capability uplift, and that's just helping you improve how you deliver. How to help teams deliver projects and services. We do that by connecting knowledge, experience, and technology. And our vision is we do that through our vision, which is building, the world's leading AI-empowered knowledge and project management platform. Right. Without further ado, so I'm just going to share slides now, and we'll just give you a quick overview of what we're going to go through with Arup. Okay. Cool. So just to sort of prep the run through, we're just going to give you a bit of background about the project, about what was MAPS, what was the reason for it, and talk about the implementation approach. We'll also cover sort of the adoption and business change approach that we designed, and look at the operating model. So how do you operate Method Grid within the business? How do you get the most out of it? And what do you need to put in place to enable it within the organization? And then give you a quick run through of the key lessons, key challenges, and then we'll draw it to a close, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. The next piece, whoops, if I can find it, there we go, is a quick, just to help you understand what MAPS is. There's just a short video that just gives you a quick introduction into what MAPS is. We thought we'd play that for everyone just to set the scene, and then we'll get into the approach about why and how we've delivered it. So if you just bear with me, this will just run for about, I think it's about 2 minutes. So just bear with me 1 second. And here it is.
Welcome to this video on MAPS, the new initiative to manage advisory project services. MAPS aims to connect knowledge with delivery and assurance to deliver excellence through digital innovation, ultimately supporting our global strategic objectives in excellence and digital. MAPS is our global delivery playbook for advisory projects. By implementing this toolkit, we are striving to deliver exceptional client service consistently through building our internal capability. It is founded on the goal that we all must continually do our work as well as it can be done. By doing this, we improve team effectiveness and productivity to deliver exceptional client services more consistently with less effort. The MAPS toolkit truly reflects our global talent, bringing together knowledge, experience, and expertise to foster creativity, increase collaboration, and improve engagement across our multifaceted organization. By connecting people to the relevant knowledge, training, and resources and experts, we are forming our global skilled community of practice. This is achieved through guidance materials, such as video explainers, and the application of these through templates and examples. This bank of information is then tailored to meet the needs of the project. We aim to constantly shape and improve this collective knowledge to influence industry approaches, meeting the needs of our people today, but also for the future. Once the toolkit has been customized, products, activities, and tasks can be assigned to individuals to ensure everyone benefits from the collective, global expertise within the MAPS toolkit. The management of projects and programs is enabled by interactive, easily configurable dashboards to track progress and compliance across our portfolios. This allows us to achieve the benefits of the MAPS toolkit through delivering our strategy. MAPS aligns to all 4 pillars of our global strategy. predominantly supporting our mission to create better solutions for our clients by embracing our digital future. By doing this, we build and continuously improve our collective knowledge for us and for the benefit of our clients. Mission to create better solutions for our clients by embracing our digital future. By doing this, we build and continuously improve our collective knowledge for us and for the benefit of our clients. The MAPS Toolkit connects our global knowledge to create bespoke responses to client requirements. This promotes innovation and supports our founding goal of doing our work, as well as it can be done to deliver exceptional client services more consistently with less effort.
You're muted, Pip.
I am, sorry, Dave. Yeah, Dave, probably over to you for just a quick introduction about background to MAPS.
Sure. So thanks, Pip, and just to say that that video gives me the feels every time. As you will have seen from the content of the video, that the intent behind MAPS, it can really be sort of boiled down to we need to get out of our own way, and that we had through a number of, we'd learned through a number of different sort of discovery exercises and sort of long experience, that we knew that we succeeded despite ourselves. Basically, we were good at providing an excellent service for the client, but that it took too much effort. We were reinventing too much the wheel every time that we did a project. And as you can see from this slide, we actually sort of began to really sort of quantify that down to actually percentage of time wasted by people at different strata, people in different stratas of the organization, just really sort of turn where they go to for the basics of how to do their job. And so the intent was very much, not to sort of set out this one size fits all approach to doing things, because that's completely contrary to the Arup culture, and the Arup culture is very anti-standardization, and that is in many ways a great strength, but in this sense it was expressing itself as a weakness, because we were spending too much of our quality time and quality resources just sort of recreating that sort of 60% that should just be a common jumping off point for every project. So that's what this slide sort of is there to capture. So in terms of a use case for Method Grid, I imagine that's a very familiar one to a lot of people. It's really just it was as knowing that we had within the organization a lot of great knowledge, expertise, collateral, but it was too siloed, and it wasn't in front of people at the point at which they needed it, and that's why Method Grid as a solution was very attractive to us. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that, Francesca, if I've
I think you summarised it quite well. Thank you.
Yeah. I think what I found really useful was the surveying the staff to get the sort of questions and insight. Just helped us really make sure that we focused what we built to address those pain points as well. So that was really, really powerful in terms of pinpointing us.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Actually, we knew that we were getting this story, then this requirement was being expressed to us from the business, and particularly from more junior staff, and it was about capturing that and, as you say, quantifying it, and then being able to play that back to them at a later point in the process, which, as as we go on, you'll see was really useful.
So moving forward, I mean, Dave, quick overview on the sort of concept that we designed.
Yeah, so the concept again is is sort of relatively straightforward in that the playbooks that we develop within Method Grid, of which the MAPS toolkit that you'll see today, that's just sort of the first of many really, are principally designed at delivering client-facing services, and they they differ, obviously, given different parts of the business, different types of services that we're providing, and then of course we also have the flexibility to sort of turn them inward as well, and use that functionality for some more sort of inward facing processes, things like how do we run and manage a bid, for example. So you can see there that there's a specific winning work grid, and the whole, again, really to sort of harp on this point of flexing with the Arup culture, we had to sort of really emphasize that these are just a common starting point. They're there to give you a really great base to jump off from, but in the operating model, every time we do this, we right size the grid for a client, so it's always going to flex to reflect actually what we're doing on any given project. So things will come in, go out, move around, and it's a continuously developing asset in that respect. And that bottom third of the diagram there, which is the skills network, so that's just a sort of internal Arup governance network for how our guidance, our collateral, and the Arup way of doing things is defined. So these are groups of subject matter experts around the globe, and we were very careful to make sure that we plugged into that model to make sure that they still had ownership of this, and we're not trying to kind of co-opt the Arup way or change it. We're just trying to distill it into an easily digestible product for people to use.
Yeah, it's quite. I think there's quite a bit of work there as well with that skills network, Dave, just in trying to work out exactly what were the best sort of templates, exemplars, artifacts that would go into the playbook to make it, really focused on that aspect. Can't be. It's quite good fun. Cool. Right, so that's sort of background and context. Next one is probably. I think we covered this, didn't we, in the video? But
yeah, I mean, it was just obviously so that there is an overarching Arup strategy, which is refreshed on I think it's every 5 years, but this is the current strategy that we're working to. And every organisation will have one. And they probably all look quite similar to each other, I would imagine. But we just found it a useful bit of internal discipline for the team to make sure that we were referring back to it, and that we knew that what we were delivering we could align to the strategy, and that wasn't something that we was sort of trying to bolt on after the fact, that it was genuinely, we could justify what we were doing under the terms of the strategy. And it also made it easy from a internal communications point of view to sort of pitch this and sort of say, well, this is why we're doing maps in the wider context of all the transformative stuff that's going on within the business.
I think as well, I think the great thing you guys did was we've managed this as a sort of strategic project, right from its inception all the way through now to sort of into deployment. That's sort of certainly helped it with its the structure and discipline, but also just ensuring that people are kept informed, and sort of leadership's. Well, Francesca, you normally hold them to account in terms of helping us and supporting us and getting the toolkit deployed. Yeah, just on that. Yeah.
Should I speak to this, Dave?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
So one of the things that we're very keen on is that whatever product that we managed to develop had full ownership. So although we were responding a lot to junior grades kind of asks that came through the feedback, and part of the way we developed it was a lot of engagements with those grades so that they would have ownership of it. It had to have senior exec ownership, and so we set up a steering group that meets regularly, that is globally based, because this would be a global tool, so that we could get input from them about how Arup ran its projects in different regions and different countries, and we could make sure that the toolkit that was created in the end was reflective of that, and also would meet the needs of Arup and Arup strategy. So we saw it as being a very important part of the success of this toolkit, of having full engagement and ownership from senior people in our steering group, and having them engaged with whatever the product direction took and what the product was at the end of the day. Anything to add to that, Dave? I think we saw it as quite an important part of the success of this project.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the project itself, sort of high-level overview.
That's right. So the setup and the configuration and the toolkit build, that was most of last year really, and I think if we had sort of had our time again, we would, knowing what we know now, we would have allowed a lot more sort of time and space, I think. Or I think let me put it another way, just to be perfectly frank, we underestimated the amount of effort and time required to actually build the product. I think there is and although we were very clear from the get-go that that MAPS was a knowledge project and it's a capability uplift project which is enabled by a software tool in Method Grid, it's still very easy to treat it as if it were just a software configuration and rollout project. And actually, the vast majority of the effort is in putting together a really rich product, a knowledge product that is, oh, thank you very much, that is worth actually putting in the tool and developing and setting out to people. So I think if we had our time again, we'd know that and we'd accommodate it.
I think we also would have probably engaged with broader groups of people earlier on. I think what we found as we've been developing it, and particularly now we're getting into the enable stage, there's huge interest in this tool and huge excitement about what this tool can bring in responding to the initial brief. I think we could have really added to the toolkit development and quality in the earlier stages if we'd maybe engaged with some of those groups of people earlier on and maybe had their contributions in the development of the toolkit.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. So you can see there that as of today, we're in our initial deployment within the UK, within the PPM specialists. And that's at the moment, that's quite a small sort of manageable deployment. And the reason for it being that way is that we want to make absolutely sure that we're deploying to a cohort the size of which we can properly support in use. And that's where the MAPS operating model comes in place. And one thing that I think we sort of did get right in terms of thinking about at the very beginning was this will only work if you have the supporting operating model in place. Otherwise, it's something new and shiny that sits there for a little while and then gradually atrophies over time and becomes less useful. So you have to think from the absolute first minute, how are we going to support this in use, and then refresh the content on a regular basis and make sure that it's a live and continually developing resource. Otherwise, its usefulness will tail away over time. And I don't think I'm sort of betraying too much sort of insider confidence by saying that Arup had a previous experience of trying to sort of scratch the itch that MAPS is there to scratch, and it not quite working, and it running out of steam on a couple of occasions in the past. This is something that probably as an organization we've attempted to try and do probably about every 10 years for the last 30 years and never quite got it right. So we were very conscious of mistakes made in the past and that we didn't want to repeat them.
Cool. And then I think the approach, I don't think there's much to add really in the approach on this one. I think the only thing I think we did a really good job on was just the gates, the controls that we put in place about.
Yeah, I think that builds upon what
testing. Yeah,
I think that builds upon what Dave was saying in that to make sure sort of we were going to our end goal was achievable and we would maintain it. And also speaking back to what I said about the steering group, we did introduce that gates and quite a strong governance to make sure there was that continual engagement in what we were developing, that we were remaining close to brief, and it was actually responding to what our survey had told us was the ask, so that we could have a product that wouldn't atrophy at the end, that there would be engagement with it, because it's actually a product that's created for people by engaging with the people who would be using it. And the gateways was our way of doing that check-in, just to make sure that we weren't applying maybe our own biases or also going in a direction that didn't suit project needs. So I saw that as quite an important part of project in terms of making sure that we didn't lose sight of what we were trying to do and what we'd been briefed to do.
Yep. And I think, probably this one was probably the one that took a number of iterations for us to get right. But I think we really have nailed it in terms of how do you, working in an organization that's global, how do you manage content development with working with so many different SMEs and people, but still end up with a quality output at the end. But yeah, I think the process that we had to iterate this, but I think we finally landed on it, and it's one that's sort of working at pace now for Arup.
Yeah. And I think it was really useful for us, I think, in a specific Arup context as well, to sort of loop back to what I was saying about a sort of fairly anti-standardization culture that's within the firm, in that when we went out initially to our subject matter experts and effectively asked them to say, can you begin to write up this theme for us and effectively begin to define the Arup way of doing X, I don't know, risk management, let's say, for an example. We met with a lot of very understandable kind of worry and caution from those people, because it was like, well, there isn't an Arup way of doing these things. We respond to client needs. There are lots of experts. Why are you asking me? I don't want to write something down and then everyone shoot me down and say that I'm wrong. And so part of the way of just being able to kind of reassure our subject matter experts in that is, well, one, to say, no, we're still not saying there's one way of doing things, but the other way was to say, no, that we do have this really kind of rigorous process in place to test the content and to make sure that it lives up to our quality standards, and that we're all happy to stand behind it when it's there. And I guess the other point to say is, please don't think that this is a final product. It's never going to be finished. It's always going to be iterating. So even if we get 3 months in and we realize actually we're not really in love with that bit of guidance on this particular thing, we'll update it and we'll change it, and it'll be better going further on.
I think probably the other thing, Dave, which I thought was really good, was the scenario testing. So giving people a problem and asking them to go and solve it with the MAPS toolkit, and just evaluating how that experience, was could they find it within the toolkit quickly, and then but also reading the content, did you have the confidence to go and give it a go or try it? I thought that sort of gave us the confidence, I think, really, that we were close and ready to deploy the toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also helped to just kind of validate a lot of the messaging internally as well, that we were sort of saying around kind of time savings and so on. And actually, I think it proved a really good confidence building measure just around the platform as well, because we very deliberately pitched people into testing with no training at all. We just said, here it is. Here's what you've got to go and do it. Now, in terms of user rollout, obviously we're doing training, but it was a really great way of being able to, here's a cohort of people that just within the space of a 25-minute session worked out how to do stuff in this tool without any hand holding at all. And that message filtering out is really powerful and really good.
It's very good stress testing of it, because people having no idea knowing what it is, but don't really know sort of how it's been set up and what their interaction is going to be. It was very positive for us, because we'd obviously set up a tool that had great usability from the testing, sent that back to us, and we were also able to get a lot of feedback from how people interact with information or how they want to access information, so that we knew what to do in the next stage.
And obviously, audit week, which we remember well in Bath, was, it's important. But what we wanted to ensure was that, I think the MAPS toolkit is about 250 elements across all the advisory services. We just wanted to make sure that, every element looked perfect. It had all the content described in the standard look and feel and layout. And whilst it was quite a busy week, I think we all came away out of that week knowing that, there's no sort of little niggles that are left behind. We're really proud of the content, the quality. It's making sure that when everyone looks at it, that they're proud of the content and the access to it. So that was also important. But yeah, quite an aggressive week. Cool. Okay. Change approach. There's two sides to this. Dave, do you want to leave the first one?
Yeah. So obviously our focus has been on knowing that there is, a sort of a little bit of institutional inertia around adoption of new tools and an adoption of any form of standardization and processes. Our conscious decision from the start was to, knowing that there was a cohort of people out there who were interested and engaged and invested in the success of this, was to just really jump on those and develop momentum and develop a sense of kind of unstoppable movement towards using this that was sort of organic and couldn't later be stopped. And without kind of wanting to go too far into detail, we knew that broadly our enthusiasts were at the younger and more junior end of the spectrum, and the people that perhaps lived in the practical and cynical columns there were likely to be higher grades and a bit older. But we knew that a great way of demonstrating to them that this was going to work is if they could feel a groundswell from their teams that they're working with day to day, that it was working for them, and that they were invested in it. And hopefully that is actually sort of proving to be the case. And also just to sort of talk to that right hand half there, it was making sure that you've got your kind of key leadership exemplars there who are really kind of modeling the behavior that you want, and that's really important. And just making sure that you've got all the relevant kind of collateral in place, and in particular to talk about operating model, make sure that people from the beginning of the rollout, and that's kind of what we're doing now, understand what the operating model is, and understand not just that this is going to kind of iterate and improve, but how that's going to work, and for them to be invested in that process. So we want them to feel like this is a product that we all own and we're all equally responsible for improving, and because this is an embodiment of our intellectual property, and you have a responsibility as an Arup person to be adding to that intellectual property and refreshing it.
I think the key bit here is for sort of implementing change. It's kind of those early adopters are probably, it just helps increase the chance of adoption, rather than just treating it like a generic campaign, fire out train everyone, send everyone emails, comms. It's kind of build that cohort of people that will help those more practical, cynical people, just give them the evidence they need to support their adoption, and just combine both approaches, I think has proving to be really successful. I mean, Dave, we've covered it a bit, and we thought it would be really interesting for some of our other clients just to sort of understand the op model design that we've put in place for I think it's for Method Hub at Arup.
Mm-hmm. So Method Hub is what, I've never been in love with the name, but it's what we call our sort of internal function for supporting Method Grid in use. And so essentially it's there to, as you can see down the left hand side of that slide, those are all the sort of the functions that it's doing. It is essentially there to manage the process of making sure that the content in the playbooks is constantly refreshed and updated, and we have methods for people in use with the toolkit being able to flag up elements that they think are worthy of attention. We also have a feedback hub tool within, which is attached to the SharePoint site, that holds all our kind of internal collateral of guidance as well, that people can that can kind of make suggestions and upvote suggestions for changes. But essentially that boils down to ownership of theme and content owners. We had that model obviously for development of the content in the first place, and we retain that model in use, and they on a biannual basis will come together, assess all the nominations for changes. That's run through a governance process with the skills networks, and then that is fed back into the next iteration of whichever toolkit is being assessed. And it was something, being able to properly resource this model is something that we were very clear about from the start, and that it needs to be there, it needs to be in place in order to support it in use. This can't be the sort of thing that you're giving to somebody to do effectively in their spare time, or it's just you do it with people who are kind of between commissions and so on. It has to be a defined set role and set of roles, and there have been challenges that come with that. That's not an easy thing to do, to kind of work through. How is that going to be paid for and resourced and so on. But hopefully we've ended up with something close to the model that we set out for ourselves anyway.
I think, Dave, is also that it's also opened up other sort of opportunities for people, especially the sort of theme and content owners that can be global, sort of helping people rotate that in terms of lead and expertise for particular sort of advisory services or sort of themes within the playbook.
Yeah.
Okay. And I suppose the Method Hub is just in its infancy, but obviously it's likely to evolve as we expand and grow out the toolkit across other service lines, across advisory services.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's there. It's really there to sort of make sure that it becomes part of the Arup way of doing things. It isn't just a sort of we can give everybody access to Method Grid, but if we didn't give some support and guidance and control over how we use the tool, then we're never going to get the best use of it out of as a company, and that's really the idea behind it.
It's probably a walkthrough, I think, for all three of us, probably in terms of sort of lessons learned, sort of key challenges that we've sort of learnt going through the journey. So I suppose we've covered a few of them. Certainly on the approach, like managing it as a strategic project has made it is probably one of the key lessons. That's made it really easy in some ways of getting the resources we need, but also the focus, I think, on that one. Francesco, anything else on that?
Sorry, I was struggling with my microphone there. Apologies. No, I think that was a key lesson that we learned from some of the previous projects or previous attempts that we'd made, as Dave referred to earlier, and we saw that as being one of the key success factors that would lead to getting to a point where we have a product that suits the brief, but also that there would be that operating model in place. That would mean that this product continues to evolve and continues to respond to the brief, because it's not a static brief, as Dave said. It's a constantly evolving and developing brief as Arup continues to develop its services for its clients.
Dave, anything else on approach?
No, I think that sort of that pretty much covers it, really. Yeah, just be, it's sort of obvious advice, but be clear about why you're doing this and what do you want out of it. For us, it was always just that sort of laser focus on, this isn't just a neat shiny software tool that we want to give people for using. We want this software tool because it's there to leverage a capability uplift that we know we need to make, and that's the point of it. Probably
consistency. I think we probably I think that the process that we implemented first helped sort of reduce or improve the level of consistency, but that is a challenge, I think, in building any playbook and trying to get different authors to write consistently to the right level of depth, detail, and in the right style. That was a sort of significant challenge. I think, yeah, don't know if you want to elaborate on further.
No, I think that captures it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we found really helped was that lead author. So, give somebody a theme, make them be the lead author, but then use SMEs for validation rather than trying to cascade it out to hundreds of people. Be very focused and use SMEs just for validation and input. But then use
focused SME attention. I think SMEs, they're experts in their field. They can get quite excited about being an expert in their field, and I think the lead author helped, I suppose, shepherd them towards what is the appropriate information. It wasn't trying to ignore other parts of their expertise. The toolkit itself does point any user to those SME leads, so if they need further information. But the lead author was very effective in saying, well, what do we actually need to inform people about to get them started, and so that they can start to deliver things in that consistent way that we're hoping to achieve, and what's the extra information that, should they need it for what they're doing or because they're interested, that they need to know, and how do they get to that. And so I think that was one of the great positive parts of the lead author.
And then concept to real life, I think probably the key one on that is just that, I can't remember, we're on version 2 now, aren't we, of the MAPS Toolkit, but that's...
but that was preceded by many 1.x, 1.x.
Yeah. And also, I think the concept of also getting all of advisory elements into one grid, I think is a challenge, but now to say that we've got a standard life cycle that maps across different frameworks, but also it's very clear on how all the themes of all the advisory services actually integrate with each other throughout that life cycle. I think that has been, well, super valuable, the output, but getting through that process is quite challenging. Quite challenging. Mm-hmm. It all aligns up. I think we covered sort of operating model in terms of how we think. The only other thing we added, which we didn't share, was how we integrate MAPS sort of objectives into performance management. Just another way of embedding the sort of cultural adoption of making sure that MAPS is updated and you get opportunities to lead projects developing content for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that's sorry, Dave.
No, it's okay. You go ahead.
I would say there's more of a softer side of it. Really, our big aim was that we wanted to have that organic adoption of the toolkit, as we really saw that as being a success. With building from the ground up, having all the right people contributing and having their ownership of it, I think for us was more important and would be a greater factor of success than sort of, as you say, building it into that performance management thing, because we wanted this to be a tool that actually responded to what people needed.
Yeah, I think it's that sense of ownership that I talked about earlier, I think was really key to us, and just on that sort of operating model thing, it's I'm probably a bit of a stuck record on that, but you have to have it front and center of your mind during the content build, because we found ourselves constantly asking the question, well, you can run away with yourself and want to put lots and lots of stuff in the toolkit, but you have to keep returning to the question, what are people going to use it for? What is the intended use case? And so, you're not necessarily describing, it is not there to say, right, tell me everything you know about risk management. It's tell me everything that somebody implementing a project needs to know about risk management. And if they need to know everything about risk management, they can go and ask you. So that's the sort of, and I keep harking back to risk as an example, but any of the themes, it sort of equally applies. Yeah.
I think, Dave, that's sort of that speed to value kind of question, that being ruthless on priority and scope control. And Francesca, to your credit, you've kept us honest in terms of what the scope, what the themes are, and which ones are the priorities, etc. And that just super helpful in terms of moving fast in terms of building, because otherwise, yeah, Dave, to your point, teams can just get overwhelmed, and you build too many things, and actually what it does require is a laser focus to build that first quality playbook. But you've got to watch out for is content build can be a barrier to value, and I think that's probably for us why we introduced AI into the platform, to help clients leverage and use AI, natural language, to help you actually fast track and build content. I think beta, well, it's released for us internally today, so we're testing it, but I think it goes out next week for the beta clients. But again, that's built to significantly help people address that, reduce that sort of how long it takes to actually build playbooks. I think we've probably covered most of the sort of adoption. I think the key one is just keep communicating as we go. So I think the project itself for MAPS was really good in sense of, yes, we're building content, but also involving teams with testing it, getting their feedback, so that actually yes, MAPS is coming, but there was always kind of events that they could participate in terms of giving their feedback to keep that enthusiasm up. So yeah. Any other ones on adoption?
No, I think we've kind of captured it as we've gone through.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that draws us nicely to the close. So I'm just going to switch screens. And hopefully, I need to fire through. Questions. So question time. So guys, please, use the app to raise your questions just on the questions tab. There are a few questions submitted already. So from Michael, so is there a continuous feedback process in place as the tool evolves and reaches greater use bases? Dave,
so the short answer is yes. As I say, it's in sort of two parts really, but the main part is we actually leverage the tool itself, and just through use of the commenting and labeling functions to allow people to identify elements that are worthy of attention for consideration. So that might be because the version of the product that they're working on they think is just better than the best practice example in there, or they think that the advice is out of date and the template is wrong, or they're just producing something entirely new, or they're producing a new flavor of something that ought to be improved. There is a way, and I won't go into the weeds. I'm sure if you've kind of used Method Grid at all, you can probably guess around it, but there's a way of basically labeling this as, yeah, we want you to look at this, leave a comment next to it that tells them why, and then we'll have a process. It's not happened yet, but we'll have a process on that rolling basis whereby our theme owners can look at a portfolio level report, all the elements that have been flagged for attention, work through them, and then that's combined with they also have a remit to sort of monitor industry and kind of outside developments and anything that they can see from there that they want to feed in, and the two is combined into a consolidated set of recommendations for changes signed off by the skills network and then fed into the next version of the toolkit. And then we also have a slightly different process for suggesting, which is more aimed at kind of platform level changes, but sort of if people have requests for particular features and so on, that we have a feedback hub and they can suggest them, and they get up and down voted according to popularity, and then we'll sort of assess them and feed them in. But that's obviously something we don't have as much control over.
One from Rab. Do you apply a standard life cycle across each grid, like a common set flow of stages?
No, there won't be a standard across each grid. We do have as part of the grid to show the relationship between each each of them. So if you're in one grid, you can understand how the layout of the stages in that grid has a relationship with another grid, but they may not have a standard. That's part of what kind of Arup's about. We don't have a standard approach to things. It's really responding to what the project's asking for and then developing it accordingly. But the toolkit is your starting point, your starting platform to develop off of.
Yeah. So there is within the current iteration of the MAPS grid, there is every grid when it's cloned starts with the same life cycle and same layout, and it can we have you can click on a guidance element which shows you how that layout maps against common delivery life cycles. So I know PACE, GRID, Highways England, Reba, all of those things. It will show you kind of how that maps across. But as Francesca says, the intention is that's your jumping off point, and you're not bound to it as a project. We would expect it to change and flex in response to the particular needs of that project.
Yeah, we've got similar, I think, similar clients that use Reba, and sometimes they're engaged only for sort of stages 2, 3, or 4 and 5. And it's kind of, you need that ability to work out which elements or which stages are actually relevant for your specific project, and then be able to adapt the grid relevant for that client or for that particular sort of appointment that you might be working with. Okay. A few other questions. What's next for MAPS? Are there any more grids in the pipeline?
Yeah, so the process we're in at the moment is, so obviously our focus has been very heavily on advisory services within Arup, but we are engaging with other parts of the business. Basically, any part of the business that feels it has a sort of a consistent, repeatable delivery methodology for whatever it's doing, and part of the method hub model is basically providing them a mechanism for support for if they want to, within their own part of the business, embark on a MAPS-like project to produce a knowledge grid, giving them, basically helping them learn from all the mistakes that we made in making maps and leverage those sort of economies of scale in helping them get their product up and running quicker. So there are a number of different things, sort of in different irons in the fire at the moment, but yeah, that's
Also, the purpose of the MAPS Toolkit is to be responsive to the people using it. So our intention is to, as we have that regular review and reflection on what's in the grid and what will be taken forward, that will also be part of informing what future grids might be developed or what sort of templates we draw out to help our colleagues as best as we can.
Another one. And do you have OKRs in place to monitor progress, and can you suggest any?
I'm sorry, I don't know what an OKR is.
Objective key result is what they are. I think probably the only one I'd say is, but probably building on your response, Francesca, is we've used sort of staff surveying to help establish a baseline on how they feel, how easy is it to do things, how much time do you spend doing X, or trying to find resources that you need for projects, how much time do you spend sort of under delegation, and the concept of MAPS is that we reissue and use that survey and approach test as we go through to make sure that we're started at a 4 and now people are saying we're a 7, now we're an 8. So I don't think we've put OKRs in place, but I think we have put in the sort of feedback loop in place to monitor what people are actually saying about MAPS.
Yeah.
And it's
I think that's right. And I think also, we have taken a sort of a benefits-led approach to this as well from the get-go. So we have a very clear set of benefits to be realised in our mind and in our sort of collective mind that we're held to account for. And there are some pretty clear metrics for whether or not we assess those benefits to have been realised. So
I think also our phased release.
Yeah.
Our phased release has also been a way of us being able to engage with people and I suppose ensuring that we're meeting the brief as best as we possibly can. So our early adopter projects, phasing the release within our advisory services team, so that as we go along, we can see use, or we can get feedback as it's being used or as it's being developed. I think I've always seen the toolkit as, even while it was being developed, as quite an evolving and adaptive toolkit before we even released it. So along the way, I won't go into the huge background of it, but there was a lot of twists and turns in what we were developing and what we prioritized and how we were going to release it and how it was going to be used. So, and that was all to the purpose of getting this final brief of an adaptive toolkit that could allow for consistent ways of working, but also allow us to respond to the Arup way of working, which is responsive to our clients and responsive to our colleagues' best practices.
Cool. Any more questions? Any more questions from the group? I suppose probably one from me. Dave, one thing you could do differently about maps, what would it be?
I'm censoring answers in my head as I sit here and think. There are a lot of things that I think we do differently. I think perhaps to go back to the content development and the authoring, it was realizing, and this actually sort of links to the AI kind of conversation you were talking about, realizing that actually the drafting, the kind of the actual bulk of literally getting words onto a page for producing your collateral doesn't necessarily have to be done by your SMEs. It has to be signed off and assured by them, and they have to be happy with the result. But actually getting yourself over the hurdle of that blinking cursor, it's actually less productive to go to your SMEs and ask for that, because they will have too much going on in their heads. It's better to have a process that we ended up with where somebody is drafting up this collateral and checking in with the SME. Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? And getting to a point, and it happened a bit late for us, where you can effectively use an AI tool as your first draft machine, I think will really speed up and compress down that sort of barrier to achieving value that you mentioned earlier. So I think knowing that, if I knew that now, that would be useful. Yeah, I mean, a lot of regrets, but not ones I'm going to talk about here.
Francesca, one thing?
I think I would have started broader stakeholder engagement earlier. By which I mean, there's been a lot of great contributions, but we did have to get something together. So we obviously focused on the SME leads, had lead authors, and had a team that was trying to put together product. We're now moving into this sort of a broader stakeholder engagement. I think we're sort of seeing the value of that now. So I wouldn't say it's a regret, but potentially there was an opportunity to sort of integrate that value a little bit earlier, so that the toolkit that we are using today already has that embedded into it as part of our, the quality content that we're providing. It will come later on down the line. It's just, I suppose, I'm keen to have a perfect product, which, we're sort of getting that feedback now, which if we'd had earlier on, it might already be in there. But it's going, as we've said, this is a developing tool that will continually respond to its users. So that will go in there at a later date.
Lovely. I think I'll draw a close on questions. So personally from me, Francesca, Dave, thank you so much for preparing this and taking us through it. And also for those that didn't, this is a sort of second run through, because we did the senior user forum, and I think the feedback from all the clients and from us it's been fantastic. So thank you both for preparing the slides and taking us through to that and making the time for it, please. That's really thankful of that.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
No, that's all right. And guys, just to finish, because I'll finish promptly at 2, next month's July's Grid Talk should be a great session, because it's going to be focused on us sharing sort of our approach, lessons learned, hints and tips that help you design, build, world-class delivery methods and playbooks, leveraging Method Grid, but it's more focused on helping you sort of leverage our experience, so you can take that away for next session. Okay. So listen, guys, have a fantastic weekend. I'll see you next month. All right. Take care.